Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur, author, artist, mother, and certified recovery coach.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevsky, entrepreneur, girl dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, a premier substance abuse and mental health treatment program.
With the collective experience of 21 years working in the mental health field, we are excited to bring to you a safe and fun place to talk all things mental health.
We will be interviewing experts, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals in the entertainment industry to better educate, inform, and inspire our community to have positive mental wealth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove, and Arthur could not be with me today, so I chose to bring in the wonderful Lori Cohen, who is the Clinical Director of Interactions Outpatient and also one of my wonderful mentors and friends. So I am welcoming two incredible women to the show today. We have Lori Cohen, LCSW, and we also have Delena Zimmerman. I feel like I have to take a breath when I say your name because you are one of those women that I just love so much, but you are a woman that I look up to, and you are a woman that has pierced my soul with your words every single time you talk. So I cannot wait to interview you today. Delena Zimmerman is an LMFT, is a trauma recovery coach, a motivational speaker, and a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in addiction counseling and the stressors of millennial life. She is the author of the new book, Do These Wings Make Me Look Fat? An unapologetic approach to spirituality and mental health. Welcome to the show, Delena Zimmerman.
Thank you so much.
So I just found out about your book, Do These Wings Make Me Look Fat? First of all, an absolute incredible title.
Thank you.
Tell me about this book. What is this book about?
It's a long story, obviously. I wrote the book 13 years ago. I am publishing the book now. It's always had that title. So the title, Do These Wings Make Me Look Fat? In my journeying on the planet, I've discovered that there's something special about me. I never quite could put my finger on it, and I used to minimize it. I didn't want other people to feel uncomfortable around my light or my special. So I was always concerned that these really big earth angel wings that I had made me look fat, like it's too much. So that's the title of the book. And the book is about discovering the thing inside of you, as opposed to just being your body and being your story, discovering that you're okay, you were created, you belong here. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing story. It's a journey about my story through drug addiction, my mental health issues, and how I embrace the fact that I had amazing, huge wings as an earth angel.
So speaking of your story, which we can learn more about in this incredible book.
Yes.
Your journey is one of the most inspiring journeys that I think any woman could hear, listen to, read. How did your journey start with drug addiction, and how did you get into recovery?
Wow. That's a big question.
I know. If you're okay talking about it.
No problem. It's part of the story. It's part of why I'm here on the planet. I understand it. I believe my depression came first. And I believe that I was already predisposed to addiction because I always sought more pleasure than necessary, whether it was candy or attention. I was never really able to control things that were pleasurable to me as a child. So eventually, the substance that came to me was alcohol, and that helped me with my fears. And then marijuana, right? That helped me be a cheerleader, a varsity cheerleader. And before you knew it, someone had put cocaine in my marijuana joint. And I thought that was the best thing that ever happened to anyone, cocaine. And before you know it, I had no choice, power, or control as to how much I was going to use. And it took me places I had no idea life could go. So that's how I got here.
I love how you say, I couldn't control the things that gave me pleasure. I have yet to hear someone describe it like that. So your body experiences pleasure, your brain releases that dopamine. And once that happens, you felt like your response to it immediately was, I can't control the amount that I take from here on out?
Well, it's hindsight 2020. When you're in it and you're a child, you don't get that. You just want more candy. And I began to be dishonest about candy. I began to steal a little change, even though I had allowance, because I wanted to be able to have enough or a lot or excessive. On Halloween, I got sick. I didn't stop. So hindsight kind of shows it to me, after looking at it.
What's interesting, though, too, is you're talking about survival, right?
Yes.
Once you have that pleasure and you want more of it, like you said, not using your allowance, because you want to keep that allowance, because by all means, if anything went wrong and you didn't have that little extra and you needed it, you had to know that you had the means to get it.
Yes. It's the same function.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter the substance.
Right.
And I love that you said you believe you had the depression before the addiction. I agree with you. That was my story as well. And I know that a lot of people relate to that. And regarding our topic today, codependency,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that codependency precedes addiction to substances?
I think codependency is the manifestation of attachment issues, insecure attachment.
Okay. So first, I know we went into a little bit of a different direction, but it's all interrelated.
Absolutely.
Because I think addiction really has to do with attachment issues.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience, professionally, personally, what is codependency?
Codependency is the way that I perform in relationships to try to manage my nervous system.
Whoa. Can we just say that one more time? I want you to say that really slow so that
That was
everyone
beautiful.
can hear that. Yummy and juicy.
Well, I think codependency is the way that I perform in relationships in order to manage my nervous system.
And interesting that you use the word perform. So it's almost like this, does it feel like a performance?
It's survival. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I am uncomfortable. I know how to cope this way. I have a preoccupied attachment. So I'm always afraid I'm going to lose what I have or I'm not going to get what I want. So that shows up in a particular way in codependency. I may be controlling. I may be in denial. I may have self-esteem issues. It depends on what my characteristics are, what I've discovered works for me, that I can manage that feeling in my stomach or in my throat. So if I really, really need you to love me, I may give you all of my toys to play with as a kid. If I really, really need you to love me, I may buy all the candy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it begins to look like I may pay the rent, right? It may look like I may buy you a car, as an adult.
I may make sure that you don't lose your job
Yes.
because you're too sick to go to work.
Yes.
Yeah. So is codependency almost like a drug for some people? It's so simple, but isn't it true?
It's just like, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's what my body needs in order to function and cope. I don't know myself any differently. This is the way I know myself. I think I'm this way. I think this is the way I need to be because you can't control your own life and you need me to control your life for you.
Why would anyone want to live that way?
Well, what if it's all I know? What if my mother was that way? What if I'm modeling behavior?
So is the codependency, the behavior, something that's learned from childhood?
It's modeled.
It's modeled.
Mm-hmm. And it's learned, yes. But codependency is not one thing. It's almost everything. It's the giver and the taker.
Mm-hmm.
The taker's codependent as well.
And I'm curious with you, Lori, like you've been working in this field for, is it 30 years now?
And more.
I mean, what is your opinion? Do you feel like codependency is something that is learned from childhood? Do you feel like it's a strategy?
Oh, absolutely. But I agree with Delena. A lot of it has to do with attachment disorders, right? Depending on, what it is. And I do think we learn that. I know for me, I watched my parents' relationship. I watched my mother with my sister, and again, we're not aware of it, so you asked a question, I think that's great. I don't know that we don't mindfully walk into it. It happens, we just like, we learn everything, right? We learn which fork to pick up, how to set the table, that you're supposed to wash dishes, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
We learn things. So some of it's implicit, some of it's explicit,
Mm-hmm.
And it's imperative at some point that we learn that we have to make decisions to change it. But I think initially, when you're that kid and you want that candy or whatever it may be, you're not aware. You're not aware that there are consequences. You're not aware that you're moving into this addictive behavior or this codependent behavior.
Do you think that our brains, though, are just inherently addictive? I mean, we're kind of set up that way. Our brains are set up for patterns. Our brains are set up for dopamine release. Our brains are set up for pleasure and to avoid pain. So essentially, on some level, aren't we all addicted to something?
Potentially. I know in America we are.
What do you think those addictions are? I'm so happy you said that.
Well, living in a capitalist society, we're always taught to get stuff outside of ourselves. Always. It doesn't matter what it is. A ball, a doll. It doesn't matter. It starts very young with acquisition. And then when we acquire things, we feel things. So it's always been a pleasure or acquisition, pleasure response. It's like getting. Everything has been about getting forever. Christmas. I mean, we have holidays that are about getting. So I think that creates it. I have children that are 19 and 21 years old. They've had an iPhone since they were 7.
What was that like getting them an iPhone at 7? I'm actually currently struggling with that decision because my kid's about to go to elementary school, and I just this week thought to myself, oh my God, am I going to have to get him a cell phone? And my heart says absolutely, with everything that goes on in schools right now and the danger that could potentially happen based on what we've seen in the news, I want him to have a cell phone. And at the same time, I really don't want him to have a cell phone.
I was so angry at my husband when he bought that cell phone for our son. And then because of what I know about addiction, I watched my children become addicts.
To their phones?
To their phones. They didn't have a choice.
Interesting. And what did that look like? How did it present with them?
Well, not having the ability to stop when they needed to, when it was appropriate, or the test was when they got in trouble and I took the phone, and the withdrawal symptoms and the anger, and they would just go to sleep. They didn't want to feel what it felt like to be without their phones. They would just put themselves to bed at 12 and 13 years old.
So can I ask you a question? What do you think the difference is then? Because, I know that there are some kids, right, that learn, I can have my cell phone, I can have my iPad, I can have that technology, right? I get to have it for an hour after dinner, and then it gets put away. And they're okay with that. Then there are other kids, again, that are just jonesing for it. I need it, I want it for whatever reason. I need to stay connected to my friends, or again, it's the stimulation. So I think it also goes back to some of us, and we can talk about, again, why,
Yes.
right? Are more predestined toward that than others. Others can have the piece of candy and put it down. So what makes that difference?
Great question.
Well, I believe 100% that some people are just physically predisposed to addiction. We don't have brain tests. You can't go to the doctor and get a test to see what your dopamine levels are. Does your brain release dopamine in a normal range, right? We don't have the test that anyone can test what your brain chemistry is doing and then have some type of measurement for it or baseline for it. Like I said, since I was a kid, I've not been able to control things that bring me pleasure.
Me too.
I believe I've always been an addict. I just seem to have been born that way.
So do you think that even if a child is predisposed to it genetically, that nature, nurture can create a different outcome for that child?
I don't.
You don't?
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
Not if they're predisposed. If I'm predisposed to diabetes because my family sort of has that gene, the weakening of whatever the pancreas or glucose measurements are. If I eat candy all the time, or if I eat sugar all the time, I'm going to hit the marker. I have to, because that's the way my chemistry is. The brain is the brain is the brain. Some kids are born with juvenile diabetes. That's just what it is.
Interesting. And related to codependency, like you said earlier, you would grab the candy. Some people grab that relationship. Some people grab those genitals. I shouldn't say that. State of our world. But it's true.
Sure.
Some people have a compulsion for sex, but related to codependency, that is something that I have seen almost with every human being that I have worked with who has struggled with substance abuse addiction problems. They remove the alcohol and the substance, and then they have issues with how they deal with relationships. And they don't know how to not make a person their life. They get into a romantic relationship or they get into a friendship with someone, and that person becomes their world. And I speak personally from that experience, and I see what people struggle with. They don't know how to say no. They overcommit to people. They're terrified of disappointing others. And so I'm wondering, within your experience, why would someone be so terrified to disappoint another individual?
Well, generally, people have not learned how to metabolize disappointment.
You use the metabolize word. I love when you say that. Someone does not know how to metabolize disappointment. Can you go a little further into that?
Sure. Disappointment feels a particular way. You don't start feeling disappointment at 27 once you're 30 days sober. You feel disappointment in your childhood. And for whatever reason, there's not been a skill set developed in order for the person to feel healthy enough or centered enough or neutral enough after they trigger that hormone release in the body.
So what would it look like for a child to learn how to work through disappointment in a positive, constructive way?
It has to do with the body. So the child has to learn how to manage the body. Breathing, of course, is the first order of action. Teaching a child how to breathe. Letting the child know that they won't be annihilated with no. That this is temporary and feel it. Teaching children how to feel negative emotion is really important. It should not be suppressed, denied. It should be addressed and felt and loved through, right? And it's okay. You're going to feel this feeling again, but you're going to be okay every time you feel it.
Right. So it's almost like there is, my dear friend Joey Tabanella would say this, that there's a stress response. There's a hormone chemical stress response to specific feelings that felt like a fight or flight or freeze response to feeling anger, sadness, sometimes joy, sometimes relaxation. There's a stress response to that. So if that child didn't learn, so you're saying if the child didn't learn how to feel disappointment or feel the uncomfortable emotion, they might essentially grab that toy. They might grab that candy. They might grab that popsicle.
They may learn manipulation of the adult. And if the adult is not balanced, then the adult will begin to start the codependent relationship. I know if I do this, then I'll get the adult to give it to me. Like you immediately go into survival mode when you don't learn how to manage the body.
And, I want to add something to this because I think it's really important. Rachel, you brought up, addiction, right? The addict family. But I do believe that codependency, and we use it religiously when we talk about addiction, but I also see it, in every realm. Mental health, we've got codependency. It happens everywhere. So, my kid is depressed, my kid is anxious, and that also elicits that response. I want to take care of you. I want to manage it. I need to be needed, right? And so sometimes, and you know this, right? We continue, right? We continue to feed the mental health as much as we love our family member, right? And we want them to feel better. We also need them to feel anxious and depressed, right? We need them to need us.
That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
We need that person to need us because it creates a role and an identity attached to that role and a system in place with that role. So I wonder how that manifests from childhood, right? Like what role did that kid have to play? What role does that mother play in the family system? Does this create enabling?
Oh, my goodness. this is just the first thing that came to mind. This is not the only answer, of course, but this is what came to my mind. I came from a family of enablers, okay? Sometimes it has to do with the family's, like the history of the family, socioeconomically. It's so many factors and variables that are in place, but this is something that came to my mind. As a mom of now, like I said, 19 and 21-year-olds, when children are developing, you have complete and utter control over them. You pick the socks they wear, you pick the colors they're gonna wear. School day, picture day, you get to pick out everything. You decide if they're gonna like dinosaurs or not. You really are in control of this thing. And then when they start getting to a particular age, they begin to become something else, or they begin to choose what they like. And for a mother that had teenagers, I was like, oh my God, they don't need me anymore. And I began I had to decide if I was going to give them everything they wanted so that they would like me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's honest and real.
Mm-hmm.
I had to decide what I was going to try to control to stay in my position in their lives. I see how enabling can occur. Mm-hmm. So I had to heal, and I had to transform, and I had to trust that they were going to be what they needed to be in this portion of their life. But I had to do that. I had to change. And many mothers don't. They keep their children through their entire adult lives so they can stay in the role that they're in control, playing God, mm-hmm. and dependent. The children remain dependent. I've seen that in my life, in my family system. My mother and father both had these kinds of parents. They didn't have faith that their children were going to be okay, so they remained in control by giving them everything.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's really important too to identify that a parent can make that shift at any point.
Yes.
So even though you walk into it when your child's starting to individuate, doesn't mean you have to continue. Once the realization hits, right, we can start to change our behavior.
Yes.
I love that. And I think that's really important for everyone who's listening to this right now, is at any moment, as long as you become aware, because you can't change anything without awareness. As long as you become aware, you can decide right now to change something differently that's not working within your family system, within your romantic relationship, within your friendship. Yes. And I love that you use the word control. Is codependency a form of trying to control something?
It's one of the characteristics. It's absolutely a portion of codependency, control. I don't have faith. I don't have my own roots in anything. So I have to attach myself or align myself with you. In the psychological world, we call it triangulation. It's like me and you and a thing. It's always a thing I have to place in our relationship in order for us to feel balanced. That's how I control it. I invite things to control what you think and feel. I'll also jeopardize my own happiness and freedom and integrity as long as I can control your outcomes, or at least attempt to control your outcomes. It's called codependency because I don't have my own dependency in my life. I can't manage my own nervous system.
That's very important. So it's, just to repeat that, it's called codependency because someone is not capable in that moment with the awareness that they have to manage their own dysregulation in their nervous system. Mm-hmm. Wow. I really think a lot of people struggle with this. Oh. And it's I feel like this is why people find themselves in relationships, in the same type of relationships over and over and over and over again. A lot of it feels very toxic. And that toxicity, I mean, if people don't have, again, to what Lori said, I think that codependency is rampant throughout this society, throughout our culture, and we don't even really know it. But I think it makes me think of, well, what does it mean to have a relationship that's not codependent? What does it feel like to be interdependent?
Free.
Yes.
And what do you think that is? Like, free of what?
Oh God, that's a great question. My first response was going to be free of dependence. And which was actually something I wanted to ask you about. As a therapist, I know people use the term codependent and dependent, right? Interchangeably. Mm-hmm. Would you define those two differently?
I'd never thought of it. My children are dependent upon me for money, but they are not codependent upon me for their happiness. I do not determine their well-being.
There lies the difference.
I just want that to be on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone needs to see that on the 405 freeway when they're rushing effectively to work. I mean, wow, to not have your well-being attached to another individual absolutely feels like freedom. And I wonder with that, this is how codependency manifested though in childhood, is that a child's well-being, safety, security was dependent on what mood mommy and daddy or the caregiver were in. And I think a lot of the time, the mother, the dad, or the caregiver, they don't teach the child how to be independent. Like you said earlier, they teach the child to be dependent on them for the rest of their lives. So, and they're not, the sad thing is it's generational.
Oh yeah.
It's generational. If this wasn't taught to you, like Lori said in the beginning, it's like you learn this is how you use a fork. Okay, well, this is how I get in relationship with other people. Oh, yeah. I'm watching, I'm observing. This is how mommy and daddy connect. If there's no dad, I connect to the fact that there's no dad. If there's no mom, I connect in relationship with no mom. If there's no emotional availability, well, that's my idea of relationship. So what happens? We become adults and we might be attracted to emotionally unavailable people, right? We might get into relationships with people where I have to fix you and you have to fix me. And we're not even really in anything that's real. It's just one childhood trauma response and another childhood trauma response talking to each other all day.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Going half on rent.
I
Absolutely.
see that as an SNL skit.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
No, and I think the other thing that happens, and you touched on that earlier, is that we also learn how to manipulate. So again, we're watching, right? In order to get this is what I have to do. Or I'm noticing dad's mood. I'm paying attention. This isn't good tonight. I know what I need to do in order to get through this evening. And so you start to, you learn how to read people. You learn how to adapt. Now there's a positive to that too, right? We know that, it's good that you have that sense and you can watch and observe and keep yourself safe, but it also lends itself to that, codependent type of behavior.
For sure. We learn love in the family. Our definition of love is not the same thing. It depends on which family you grew up in, which will determine what love you think love feels like. And then when you feel that feeling again, when you meet someone, you think it's love, but it's not always love. Sometimes all strong emotion is not love. Sometimes we're in fear with each other, not in love with each other.
Can you please go into that? Again.
That's a good one.
I want to sing that song. Sometimes we're in fear with each other, not love. I mean, that's just so good because we talk about falling in love all the time. Well, what about falling in fear all the time? And what is that like?
Well, it's either love or fear. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. And so if the choices I make are not toward my spiritual growth and your spiritual growth, then that's not love. If it's, so my body can feel better, if I can make sure you don't cheat on me, or, if I think you're my person, whatever the hell that is.
It's your person.
Right. It's a trip. It's like, that's what happens. I own you. You're my person. Now you have to think the thoughts that I need you to think. Now you have to say the things that you should say if you know me. Like, it becomes oppressive. And that's fear-based. It's obligation. Here comes Valentine's Day. I love therapy on and around Valentine's Day. You should hear the madness. People are like, well, did they love you on the 13th? Like, that's the conversation you need to be having. Was there love on the 13th?
But how did they hug you on the 14th, though?
I hope I get flowers. Well, what will that mean to you? If you get flowers, what will it mean? If you don't, what will it mean?
What will it mean? So we subconsciously create a meaning to a behavior. And I was laughing earlier because my person, That's why I was laughing, because how many of us have been indoctrinated into this belief through film, through Disney movies, that all I need is a man or a woman and I'm going to be fixed.
Cinderella.
I know.
Was absolutely insane. She was being physically and emotionally abused, right? Where was her father, right? And so she was a mess. She was a mess. And we don't get the rest of the story when he scoops her up and takes her back to the palace, what his issue is with her, how her trauma responses were manifesting. We don't get that portion of the story. There is no happily ever after.
Yeah.
There is work your buns off.
Work your ass off. I'm laughing because it's insane. It's insane, the messages we were given. I actually talk about this in group all the time. Think about Ariel. Ariel had to lose her voice to be with her prince. And then in order to get her legs back.
What's the resentment here?
I forgot about that story.
Yeah, what's my resentment?
Yeah, I'm just saying, no, how much resentment do I have that I have to compromise my gift
Right.
for you?
My singing. My voice.
What the creator gave me.
And we don't even realize that children are taking this in. I thought you were asking me, what's my resentment? I'm like, yeah, I resent that I was being taught those things. And I don't even think we realize like what we're learning growing up. That almost every movie growing up, I was taught, in order for me to be happy, I have to find Prince Charming. I need a prince to fix me. I need to find a husband. And guess what? I did that. It didn't fix me. Nothing outside of me fixes me.
Stop.
Okay.
He didn't slam his hand down your throat and turn the switch off?
No, actually not. Isn't that weird? I was about to make a bad joke.
I mean, that is what we think is going to happen.
I know.
You have the power to, can you get this thing out of me, please, that I've had since I was 7? Can you move that, please?
Right. And I think there's a lot of symbolism in the things that you were talking about, right? Even the acknowledgement of the loss of voice, right? I cannot use my voice. In order to get what I want, in order to be safe, I can't speak my truth. You know, and that's what, I mean, this is the last several years. What have, with, you know, the women's movement, you know, what we're talking about now is using that voice.
Yes.
But for so many years, that's what we heard, that's what we watched.
In this America, yes. That's what I mean. Like, it's like we're predisposed to codependency anyway.
You know, and I don't know if your experience is, because you have a young son, but I'm a grandmother now. And it's actually pretty remarkable. I'm watching my daughter and my son-in-law with my grandson, who are really supporting him. You know, it's not, oh, don't cry. You know, oh, come on, that wasn't really that bad, or you're not really hurting. It's, tell me how you feel, right? It's okay. You know, and when they say no to something, no, I don't really like the idea. And they'll do the explanation. It's not really, you know, safe to do that. But when he is upset and you know, voices it, they go, it's okay. You can be mad. It's okay to be angry. And I'm watching this going, wow, this is different. I don't even know where they learned to do this. So my hope is with these, you know, younger generations now bringing up kids, that there's more awareness. You know, again, it doesn't mean that they should have no limits and boundaries, but again, to be able to really nurture, right, their own thoughts and feelings and make them okay and normalize them.
I love that. I just want to hug your kids right now.
I do too.
Oh, they're amazing.
And I think that's the generation that's being raised right now. I think we didn't have these tools. Parents didn't have this awareness back then. And now it's being, now this new gentle approach with parenting, this new conscious way of parenting is becoming the norm in a lot of places, and it's still not the norm in many other places. And we talk about this all the time on this show, is just really helping people understand that your childhood affects your adulthood, and you have to explore what you learned consciously and unconsciously through the foundational years of your life. And what did you learn from your parents growing up? What did you learn about relationships growing up? What did you learn about communication? When you cried, what was your parents' response to that? And you were saying it earlier, it's like we're predisposed to codependency. And I think about it, yeah. as soon as I'm born, I mean, I'm in my mother's womb for almost 10 months. I'm one with my mother. Then I'm born, and I have to depend upon another human being to feed me, to shelter me, to clothe me. And at what point do you think a parent needs to start separating? I don't know how to ask this, but I mean, I do. I'll figure it out. But how does a parent teach a child to become independent? At what age can a parent start teaching a child their independence?
Well, parents don't need to teach it. It's the natural development of humans.
Amen.
So we don't understand that as parents, what human development is. It's just really interesting. Like, I have a car, and I know that if I push the button, it will come on. And I know when that little thing light comes on, then I'll take it to the place where you get the juice in it. I know that about my car. I don't know anything about the hybrid battery, combustion, transmission, none of it. I don't, but I can drive it. So this life, I know when I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I moisturize my skin, like I put my hair in places, right? And so we learn that growing up, but we don't really understand about this mechanism that we are. We don't know. So a child will begin to individuate very young. I believe it's age 3 to 5.
Yeah, I think it's 3 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're individuating from the age 3 to 5. And so to people that might not understand what individuating is, what is individuating?
Well, it's like separating from the core dependence that we talked about. The child reaches out and begins to explore life with its hands and its mouth. And that's how it begins to learn textures, and it mirrors back what it's experiencing. Basically, children are little recorders until age 12. They're recording everything that they're experiencing. And so this begins to happen. It's sort of like what I talked about. My kids they begin to be something else all of a sudden because it's development. It's natural. But if the parent doesn't know, then the parent will treat the child like something else is occurring, or they don't want them to get away from them, or they are neglectful.
It's so interesting that you're bringing this up, because I was having, and by no means am I saying this to shame the baby boomer generation at all, but I was speaking to someone who grew up in that time that was disagreeing with the way that I was parenting my child. I think we were at the park. I don't even remember where we were, because my son was saying no a lot. And I wasn't, quote unquote, disciplining my child correctly. And what I said to this person was, I'm teaching my child that saying no and using his voice is good. And even though it's hard on me as a parent right now, because it's a lot of managing my own frustration and it's a lot of outbursts from my kid, him disagreeing with things right now at 5 and that being celebrated by his parents, how that develops later on in life is, I have a voice. I don't have to be afraid of disagreeing with you. Mm-hmm. My self-esteem is not dependent upon what you think of me. I might not like it. It might feel uncomfortable, but I'm also going to be okay with using my voice. And I think the opposite of that turns into codependency.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Not saying I'm perfect. I'm not.
Well, no, but your son will learn how to use no like currency, depending on the exchange between the two of you. That's the whole thing, you know. I was raised by baby boomers. And I was raised about people from the segregated South, and everything was disrespectful that was not in alignment with the program. What that manufactured in me was that I didn't matter and that I didn't have a voice. That my feelings, I had to learn how to compress them, suppress them, hide them. I couldn't organize anything because it was not allowed, right? So no could have caused me physical pain and abuse, right? You don't get to say no. So that's the other side of it, right? I think there's a medium though. And I think the medium is, no, I hear you, I understand it's important that you have your voice, but you have to also understand the hierarchy in which you're existing in, because we live in an America that includes a hierarchy. So when the teacher says it's time to do this and you say no, then you're now impacting your learning and the environment of the other kids. You have to learn how to function in the system that we live in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was rolling around in my head. Exactly. And I think that we have to learn. The kids do need to understand no. And that's what I said. And oftentimes an explanation is really helpful. You're not always going to have the opportunity to explain in the moment, but again, for their safety as well.
Right? I agree. And I love that you said that. It's I think preparing children for the world that they live in. And that is really important. I think a lot of parents don't want to teach their kids the world that they live in. They don't want to rob them of their innocence, so they're afraid, if they learn this, then something bad will happen if they learn this. And I think that does a disservice to the child. Why not prepare the child for the world that they live in with really valuable skills and tools? And this is the reality of what a lot of interactions will be like.
And that's learning how to manage your nervous system as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I don't feel like it. No, mommy, no. Okay, feel that. Okay, now transfer, right? Feel it, honor it, it's good, it's fine. But now you have to do it.
I had a client today come up to me. It's perfect question for what you just said. She has 2 toddlers. And she said, what do I do when my 2 toddlers are yelling at me?
Mm-hmm.
How would you respond to that?
My toddlers would have to understand that I'm the mother. In families, there's the executive system, and then there's the subsystems. My children cannot be in the executive system with me. I am the leader. I have vision, I have wisdom, I have direction, and you have to be able to follow the leader.
So how do you teach? Sorry, I'm interrupted.
It's okay. I taught my son. I made this up. Like literally, it was a social experiment. I saw dogs nip their baby puppy because it was taking the breast from the runt. I watched a dog move the bigger dog and let the runt get the milk. So it shocked me. I'd never seen a dog discipline a dog because that's what it was. It was setting the boundary. And so I said, well, I better set a boundary with my son. He's the oldest. And so what I used to do is take his little T-shirt like this, like bunch it up. And I would say, I'm the mommy. That's what I would say to him. I'm the mommy. Okay? And then I'd kiss him. And he understood that there was a hierarchy. I don't know how it worked, but he understood that there was a hierarchy between us. And so he was listening for direction. So maybe you're yelling at me. Maybe you're upset. That's fine. I honor that you're experiencing this right now. No, you can't get a toy in Target right now. I feel that. So let's feel the whole thing. I said, are you done? We count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's breathe, right? Okay, let's go. You okay? Okay, let's go. So honoring a child's experience, however it is they manifest, but yelling at me for what? I'm the leader. And if there's no leader, then there'll be no followers.
I love that. I actually learned this from my therapist, another therapist at the time. I was working through my own resentment towards authority because I was raised in some way to fear authority figures. Mm-hmm. And so I rebelled against authority figures. And my therapist said to me, well, how is having authority helpful though? So I think it's important to look at it from all angles, especially when you're, and I remember looking at this in a group dynamic. If there's no rules, there's chaos. But how do you have a system where you don't fear authority, but you respect them?
Well, you're not scary. You're not a scary authority.
So as a parent, be the leader, own that, adopt that, but do it without shame and fearing them. So it's like providing boundaries without causing them to be afraid, correct?
Yes, and they may have some fear. That's fine. Children may fear you because of the voice, the tone of voice you use. That may be there. But if you're not abusive, then they know that you just have set the boundary.
There's a line.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, possibly another tactic. One of the things that I used to do, with my kids.
She has 3.
I try to do them even now, but they're older, they're smarter than me. They're
absolutely.
more well established. Anyway, they're awesome.
They're amazing.
But one of the things that I did with them, for me, this was important, was open communication.
Mhm.
So, look, you're yelling at me. I can't hear you when you're yelling. You dysregulate my nervous system when you're yelling. If you want me to hear you, I need you to take it down. I need you to talk. Let's sit down, right, and talk about what's going on.
Mhm.
And so we would do that, and they could do that. And again, it may still be, no, we can't do that tonight. Or, no, you can't do that tonight. But what else can we do? And it's okay to be disappointed, right? And that's where you're doing your kids, a justice by teaching them to accept and to be okay with that. But also, again, giving them the voice, allowing them to have the voice.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about right now is how to approach parenthood differently so that children can become interdependent adults and independent adults where they don't have to seek out unconscious codependent relationships. So those are some examples if you're a parent, I think. If you are someone who's currently struggling with codependency, like I was, and it was like a big mind-blowing situation, what do you think the first step is to healing?
How am I struggling with codependency? Like, what's the pain point? Because the pain point is different depending on who you are and the role you play. Are you in denial? Do you think that sex equals love? Is that the only way you get to experience love? That's a form of codependency, right? Do I compromise my integrity in order for you to like me? Will I move you out of your apartment, by myself? Like, what is my pain point? So I'm not going to change until my pain threshold is exceeded. And then I see that I need to change. And I probably may do it 4 more times to make sure that it's painful.
So good.
Because
That's true.
it's the only way I know myself.
Maybe 8.
Yeah, I might spend 10 years here trying to manage and manipulate and be less codependent in my codependency.
And the manipulation is a survival trait, right?
Absolutely.
It's not bad. It's not shameful. This is what I had to do in order to get my needs met, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so I may be looking for acceptance from you. And so I'll do the things I need to do to get your type of approval. Like codependency could be a number of things. What do I do to get help? Well, I decide that I don't want to live that way anymore. It's like hitting a bottom in drug addiction. I've had enough. I'm tired of spending all my money, or I'm tired of getting a towel after sex and you telling me I have to leave. Like, I'm tired of this feeling. And so I have to want something different for myself. And I have to ask for help. Therapy is key,
What if people can't afford therapy, which is one of my main resentments towards our culture right now, is we all need help and not everyone can afford therapy and not everyone has insurance. So what are some options for people that don't have the ability to pay for therapy right now?
Codependency Anonymous.
Yes, amen.
Coda.
Your Instagram. People can go to your Instagram.
Go to my Instagram.
Yeah, Coda.
Coda.
I'm a part of Coda. I don't know if that's allowed to be said, but I am. And it's really, really helpful. It's a 12-step program and it works.
And it's free.
And it's very free.
And I have the book in my purse.
You recommended the book to me. So.
And I wrote inventory and I got better. And it freed me from trying to control and manipulate my children from Los Angeles, and they live in New Orleans. Like, it's a hard thing to do, but I was willing to try, to control them from here. And it also helped me operate better in the romantic relationship that I was in. It also helped me get out of the romantic relationship that I was in. So
how do you, in romantic relationship, operate differently from the way you were before when you didn't have this awareness around codependency versus now?
I was like a child. I was always triggered. He spoke to me in a tone that was similar to when my mother spoke to me when she was angry at me. And so it would feel exactly the same way, and I would shrink in exactly the same way. And I would become like servile and scraping or broken, and then manipulative emotionally, guilt tripping, tearful, fix me, put me back together again, which made me dependent on his love language, right? And depending on how he felt in our codependency, he may give me what I need, or he may, dangle the carrot, or he may just be mean. So it was a horrible cycle that I kept trying to manipulate, until I couldn't do it anymore. The pain threshold was too high, and I began to develop self-love. So my dependency was on God, on a higher power. My dependency began to be on the soul of me. And I stopped needing his hugs. I hugged my damn self.
Amen. You mean you didn't have to lose your voice?
Oh my
You
goodness.
didn't have for the man that you love? You mean because you fell in love with yourself? You didn't have to fall in love with someone else in order to feel whole? It's amazing just how much that is affected me in my life, but also in our culture, that it is possible to be happy on your own. It's okay to be in relationship with others, and it's totally possible to love yourself the way you want others to love you.
Mm-hmm.
To go outside and be like, oh, I'm going to go on a hike by myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a cup of coffee for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write love letters for myself. I remember going to Trader Joe's, and I walked in and I saw all these flowers. And I thought to myself, no one ever buys me flowers. And then I thought, buy yourself some fucking flowers. Why can't you buy yourself some flowers? And I think those are like the little practical shifts in behavior and thought that happen when you do this work around codependency, is the things that you seek out other people to do for you. You start realizing you have the power to do them yourself.
Yeah. You stop needing.
You stop needing.
Yeah. And it's okay not to need anyone. I just really need oxygen. That's it. Right? That's all I really need is oxygen, and maybe cake.
If it's a bad day.
I'm good.
And coffee. Yeah, coffee, cake, and oxygen.
And I think, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, and I know we're going towards the end of this interview, I also think it's important to have healthy relationships, like where I can need other people, but it's not in a way where you're going to fix me. But I feel like I do need a friend sometimes.
Well, yeah, sure. We all need to feel connected to each other. We did not come to this planet to do this by ourselves. But I don't need you for my well-being. We'll go back to that, right?
That's what that is. Yeah.
I can lean on you, right? But if you're not there, I won't fall over. So I can reciprocate and share my energy, my time, exchange love with you. But I used to need people in the room, put your foot on me, I used to have the feeling someone said this, I want to unzip your body and get in with you.
Absolutely. I relate to that so much. That's been a lot of the recovery with the CODA stuff.
Yeah.
It's breaking free from like this symbiotic?
Symbiotic, yeah.
Symbiotic.
Yeah.
It's exhausting being codependent, to be honest with you. I'm just getting real so that people can relate. It's exhausting. And I remember after doing some of the work around it, I had so much more energy because you're not unconsciously, subconsciously wasting it trying to get your needs met by other people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, a couple last questions for you.
Okay.
1, how do you got your mental health today?
What do I do?
Yes.
Oh. So I'm predisposed to depression, as I stated earlier in the interview. So I do not stay in my bed, ever. If I lay in bed and watch TV, it's always on top, never in the blanket. So I'm aware of that. I know my predisposition, so I don't put myself in that situation, right? So I meditate every day, once or twice, no matter what. It's a lifestyle for me. I always go within. That's always my solution. I deep breathe a lot as well. I had a therapist, but she recently made her transition, like last week.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but she saved my life.
Wow.
And so it's really important to get clear and free in your purpose, because you might save someone's life, But therapy every other week for me. I go to meetings. I sponsor women. I also have workshops where, so that my circle of women that I spend my time with, that we are feeding each other and expanding each other, that we are expanders for each other, and we evolve together, that our conversations are a high frequency. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You know, it's not good for your mental health.
Amen.
You know, so I exercise as well. I go to the gym and I hike a lot, you know.
And we always ask these questions. I feel like I've said amen a lot because I just like everything you say. I just want to like, yes, like I just want to go that, you know, because it has affected me so much. And I know that it can affect so many people. And you're so real and you're so honest and you're so vulnerable. And that's what heals other people is when we can be honest and other people can go, oh my God, yes, me too. Like just that little shift of sleeping on top of the bed versus underneath the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is those little shifts in behavior that transform us. It's not the big, it's those little, okay, I woke up and I didn't check my phone today for the first 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up and I meditated for 2 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, can I add 2
Yeah.
things? I also have a self-love practice that I do in the shower. Every day in the shower, I don't care if I'm late, I always pause and hug that little girl. She's about 7. And I bring her with me. And I think that's been really important because growing up, not having your needs met as a child will make you an adult that has not had your needs met. And so I try to meet my needs daily so that I don't need it from someone else. It like bars me from codependency. The last thing is that I'm a woman. And so I am a woman in the world. And so I think it's really important to be that and be aware of that for good mental health. If I feel sexy, I feel sexy. If I feel feminine, I feel feminine. If I'm attracted to you, I'm attracted to you. I allow myself to be that I am. So I think that's good for mental health, especially being a middle-aged woman that's single. I do not deny sexuality. Yeah.
Well, that will be another episode. God, that's so good.
2
episodes.
2 episodes.
So good. And if you could tell one thing to younger Delena, what would you tell her?
You are good enough. You've always been good enough. You'll always be good enough.
So good. So good. Well, thank you, Delena. Thank you so much for your wisdom and thank you for your vulnerability. If everyone, listen, if all of you want more of Delena, which everyone does, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram mostly, Delena Zimmerman Therapy. I also have a website, DelenaZimmermanTherapy.com. The book is in pre-order now. You can get it on my website. You can also get it off of Instagram if you click on the link. So, do these wings make me look fat?
And you're doing a women's workshop soon, correct?
I am. So the workshop is called Love School, and we're talking about it, learning how to love, changing the paradigm, creating a love culture, something we need. Instead of a cancel culture, a love culture. We can love ourselves, each other more effectively.
It's great. It's beautiful.
Any last words, Lori?
No, this was just, this was enlightening and very exciting. I'm really happy to have met you. I love the way you frame things up. I mean, it really makes, it makes a lot of these things that I think are really uncomfortable for people. It makes it really comfortable to hear. So I just thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both, you wonderful therapist, female, powerful powerhouses here. Thank you, everyone, to listening to the Got Mental Health podcast. I very much appreciate all of your feedback that we are getting on social media. If you haven't already, please follow, rate, review us. And we are on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we love all of you. So thank you. Can't do this without you. And looking forward to an all new episode next week.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Rachel.
Thank you so much, Lori.